my experience in putting deals together, particularly in the cannabis space, and even non-cannabis, but particularly cannabis, is that it's not the life, as I said at the very beginning, it's life support, resurrection, death, or maybe not in that order, and then over and over again, recycle. There are many, many times in any given, particularly cannabis transaction, that you've got to be prepared that things are going to go sideways. In fact, if they don't go sideways, it's probably not a cannabis transaction. React to that?
I mean, deal fatigue is real, right? And I've actually been through it myself, brought some companies through it as well. Deal fatigue is real. You got to be ready for a year or more. You know, it's like dating, making sure you're all on the right same page, core values, the whole thing, culture. It's not just buzzwords.
It's any transaction, right? I've done 100 senior secured transactions. I've done 30 equity financings. I've done 30 M&A transactions. I've done 10 traditional pharmaceutical partnerships, right? Any transaction like that is like walking a drunk person home in a snowstorm. You're going to slip and fall 3 times. You might not make it home. You might break a hip. So if you haven't gotten to the point, and the other thing is, you need someone on your team who realizes that the oh shit moment is going to happen and isn't going to panic.
Correct.
So
and it's going to happen more than once in any given deal.
So when the buyer calls you and says, I hate these guys and I don't want to do this, and the seller calls you and says, well, the guy insulted my wife and I don't want to sell him the company, you got to coach them to the point where you say, look, it's got to fall out of bed, it's got to work, it's got to come back. It's part of the process.
Rachel?
I always try to find the deal breakers, because I think people get caught up in the minutia of the deal. And so I try to look at what, if we don't cross these particular hurdles, what are the deal breakers? And then we just stop talking. We stop wasting energy. So for example, if somebody's acquiring you and they're just going to give you stock when they go public, which may never happen, okay? That might have happened 3, 4, 5 years ago, but now that's not a reality, and you're not getting any cash out of the deal, right? If they're going to give you all stock, that's a deal breaker. If you can't cross that hurdle, don't even bother wasting your time talking about anything else. I say highlight the deal breakers until you cross those hurdles. Don't talk about anything else. Save your energy.
That's a really, really excellent point, because particularly if you're in the beginning stages, and I was lucky in the first couple of deals I did, they were MSOs, but of the 25, probably 23 of them have been local folks trying to take advantage of the licensing opportunity. And you've got to have, you have to have a really good team, but you have to have patience. You frankly have to have capital. The one area that I think I would disagree slightly with Seth is that you're not going to be able to have proof of concept most of the time because you're beginning. So you better have a damn good business plan that's bulletproof, that folks will say, these people have really thought this through. It's, you know, when clients come in to me, and they think that, you know, they're going to be able to get a license or they get local approval, you know, I say, congratulations, you have the opportunity to lose money, because that's the reality if you don't do it right. And frankly, even if you do it right, there's extraordinary challenges. And you know, you've gone back into the industry, back really in California, so the roots, so you've seen all of the cycles, and maybe share a little bit about that with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, some of my clients are the real OGs, some of the larger OGs that have been mentioned previously, and I've been through everything with them. And, you know, these people have been in the industry, they came from the legacy market, period. And, you know, so you have to, if you're going to be in this industry, and your service professionals that are in this industry need to have some thick skin, they need to have been here for a little while, and they can't be shell-shocked at some of these things that come across in this industry, which are quite crazy, right? Yeah.
Well, let's talk about something positive, and then let's drop reality on your skull, okay? So something positive. I think I'm going to put up a post on Thursday or Friday talking about New Jersey and the fact that New Jersey is $1 billion market, and I'm going to mess it up, but whatever the trade association is that governs cannabis in Jersey put out these amazing statistics. And, you know, as a market, when I look at Jersey versus Ohio and Illinois and Missouri and Maryland, and that's the way that I think about markets, it's a top 10 market. It's probably a top 5 market, and it's going to continue to grow. So it's $1 billion market, okay? price compression is coming. And if you don't believe that, take a look at 15 other markets where that's happened, right? So you have, with no disrespect to anybody, you maybe have one company that can grow good weed here legally. One company. There's more coming, and when that happens, that's going to happen. So just get ready for that.
Talk about price compression, because that's a really and you've lived it, certainly, and seen it. That's a really interesting point, because when people come to see me, I say, forget about the price today, knock that down by about 70 or 80% and make sure that you can live at that kind of budget.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about the illicit market sending product out here to the Northeast, are we? So that's just reality, right?
We can, though.
I mean, we can, right? Because that's driving, that could drive prices down. You know, just the reality is, you know, the West Coast is shipping some product out here, right? And so we need to talk about reality. We all know that's not legal, but it's happening. Let's deal with reality.
Yeah, I mean, you also have Delta that's coming strong. And if you don't believe in Delta and in beverage, start believing, because I'm going to start preaching that gospel pretty hard as well. So, you know, you have a good 12 to 24-month window here in Jersey before I think you start to see things that have crept into other markets creep into this market.
Yeah, one of the things that is, I think, a little bit different about Jersey, and New Jersey's really, for those of us who live in the state, it's really about 3 different states. It's North Jersey, Central Jersey, which really is a thing, and South Jersey. And North Jersey, particularly in Hudson County, is going to be more like a New York type of situation where you're going to have places right next to each other, maybe have bodega problems that Manhattan has. Then Central and the South, though, you've got lots of land, but then there's greater expectations. For example, you will not get a project approved south of I-95 unless you've got really good parking. In Hoboken or Jersey City, maybe that's a different situation. So you really have to be sensitive to your area as you're trying to get your approvals. The other reason why I'm very up and high on New Jersey is because, frankly, New York is still pretty much challenged. Connecticut is screwed up. Pennsylvania hasn't even gone to rec yet. And Delaware and Maryland are just kind of catching up. I think Massachusetts is doing it well. But the reality is you've got 10 million people, pretty close to that, 8 or 9 million people within 3 hours of each other that all can buy product. So, and I think that's a plus. But again, my horizons might be 3 years, not 2.
No, I think that's such an amazing point, right? Like I'm in California, but because of the way that I look at things, I probably look at 16 markets, right? And New Jersey feels to me almost like a Missouri of the East, right? If you look at Missouri and you look at the western edge of Missouri, Missouri's bordered by 3 or 4 states that are probably never going to allow adult use cannabis. So you have the same functionality here in Jersey, right? Where if I'm in Jersey, I'm not driving to Pennsylvania for expensive, shitty weed. New York's fucked. Connecticut's worse. You're not going to Delaware because there's 20 stores there, right? So the combination of the geographic kind of provinciality of it and the fact that, well, I don't think it's a completely limited license state. The rollout of retail, you don't have 2,700 doors here, right? So
No.
like the rollout of retail has been segmented and slow and metered and kind of controlled, I think has certainly helped.
There's been the challenge of the, I don't want to say undue influence, but the significant influence of locals, okay? Because before you even get to the CRC, you've got to get your local resolution of approval. The first thing is only a third of the communities opted in. And of that group, some of them did not opt in for everything. They just opted in for cultivation and processing and not retail. So first you've got to get that resolution of approval, which means you've got to talk to the mayor and convince the governing body that you don't have horns in a tail. Then you've got to get a letter from the zoning officer saying that's properly zoned, or else you've got to go to the zoning board and get a variance or get and then you have to get planning board approval. All that stuff has to happen before you even get the opportunity to get your CRC approval. So there has that kind of uber focus of local approval, I think, has been good and bad. It's been good in that there has not been such an overabundance of licenses that people are killing themselves, but it's also slowed down the process. The Senate president Scuteri, who was the senator who was the driving force behind legalization, has now, and I'm going to be writing about this in Benzinga.com as soon as I get the time to do it, is now introducing legislation that's going to fast track with respect to local approvals and to some extent CRC approval, that if it's not done within a certain period of time, it defaults to an approval. And that's kind of a very sloppy summary, but that's kind of what's going to happen. That will help the industry dramatically, but it may also create new challenges that you'll have too many competitors. Now, I don't think that's a problem in New Jersey immediately, but I think if passes prologue other states, that could be an issue 3, 4, 5 years from now, or sooner.
I was going to say, so yeah, I mean, like I said, cannabis is hyper-localized. So even in a more mature market, say in California, a few years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, we're all headed for disaster here, to be honest. But you know, honestly, all the clients that I've had in California are still around. 98% of them are still here. It's really about operational efficiency. It's all really about your use of capital, working capital in the right ways. It's really how do you manage your business. So even though there's price compression that comes and issues, it doesn't mean everybody's out of business in 3 years. It doesn't mean you need to get out in 3 to 5 years. If you want a business, whatever your motivation is, to pass it on to the next generation or sell or whatever your exit plan is, it's there. You just have to operate the business like it's a business and prepare for price compression, prepare for things, but just operate your business like it's a real business.
Yeah, I don't know that I have too much to add to that.
I tell my clients when they come in, unlike the time you use the product, there really is gravity in this business. It's just like every other business, okay? And Seth said it a different way, but your business plan, you really need to know what you're doing, not only because it's the only way you're going to attract investors who are not friends and family, and frankly, even friends and family should hold you to that standard, but it's the way that you're going to sustain yourself. That business plan becomes your Bible. Your SOPs, when you send it to the CRC, will emanate from that business plan.
Well, you also one of the biggest lessons I learned when I started my career was that I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And I was dressed down early on by someone who, kind of expected that I would know something that I should have known and I didn't. And I think part of the critical lesson that I like to convey to people in cannabis is that I've seen everything. I am from the future. Anything that you have thought of doing, any model that you have run, any assumption that you have run, any product that you have thought about doing, I have seen it. I have looked at it. I have tested it. Okay? We were doing $17.5 million a month of revenue at ease at its peak. I have seen it. So if you want to go get financing from the 3 people that were up here previously, and you have an assumption in your model that's in outer space, the probability of you getting financing just went to 0, because they're going to look at 1,000 projects a year. So the other thing that you have to range find is like, okay, what's reality? Because the people that have been doing this in 14 other states for 10 years have seen it all, So you got to know what you don't know, and you need to find people that are going to be able to convey that to you, like these people, right? Because they've seen it.
And the fact that you can grow really good stuff doesn't mean you're going to run a good business. I mean, I've turned down more people than I accept as clients because I don't want to take their money if, number one, they're not going to get approved, and number two, frankly, if I think they're not going to succeed. And that's a hell of a position to be in. Maybe that's a little too self-righteous, but a lot of the times, particularly with the local folks, they're bringing their life savings. They're cashing out their pensions. I mean, and I think it's just really important that you say this is not a lottery ticket. And maybe it is a lottery ticket because most of them aren't worth anything. Okay, what this is an opportunity. But it's an opportunity that, to Seth's point and Rachel's point, you better be prepared to be able to back up what you're going to say. And you better be prepared to have it real and not just a bunch of crap.
No, you go first.
Well, because you're up against killers. You're up against killers. You got a retail license in Parsippany, New Jersey? Congratulations. Congratulations. Whoop-de-doo. You're up against TerraSend and AYR and Ascend and Nova Farms and Ianthus and who else am I missing that all have $100 million balance sheets and are coming for your lunch because they're in 7 states. You're up against killers. So get ready.
I was just going to go along those lines. The reality is there's a lot of predators in this industry, right? And there's a lot of people that actually want to help, but there's also a lot of predators. So the life cycle of a deal is watching out for those predators. We haven't even touched on like social equity and things like that. We can certainly touch on that. We don't have time. But just, instinct is number one. And read the terms. Go with your instinct first, and then look at the terms, because there's a lot of people that will snatch your business up in a minute.
Yeah, the
That's
predator
all there is
point.
to
The
it,
predator
yeah.
point is extraordinarily important. Don't leave your common sense at home. If it looks and smells and feels like it's bad, the first thing you got to do is talk to folks who do this and say, how bad should I expect to really get screwed? Because frankly, unfortunately, other than Seth's deal, the numbers are very high in terms of borrowing, and that means you better have, again, a good business plan to succeed. I do want to give you a little bit of positivity versus the so-called big guys or big businesses. The reality is many of them, and I say that's with respect because I represented 1 or 2 early on, have been treating OPM, other people's money, and not mom and pop's money, not their own money. And as a result, they have burnt through money and pissed away a lot of the money. I probably shouldn't use that word. Given away or burnt up, whatever phrase you want to use. And I think if you look, because if you look at the Canadian Stock Exchange, which allows cannabis stocks to be traded, unlike New Jersey, unlike the United States, you'll see that they've lost a lot of money. So although they are big behemoths, they're big battleships, they're battleships that are not invulnerable. So I happen to believe that if you make a good product, and I heard earlier one of the other panels about customer service, as someone who is a customer on a weekly basis in New Jersey, that does matter. If you have the good bud tenders, if you have a good product, if you treat people well, and if you have a good business plan and sufficient capital to withstand the challenges, there's still great opportunities in New Jersey.
Yeah, and I don't want to imply that the bigger companies are bad or evil or nefarious. That wasn't what I was trying to convey.
No, I wasn't
right?
either, but they're big.
But the point that I was trying to make is that if you're one person and you're putting your life savings into a store and you have a company that is professionally run and raised hundreds of millions of dollars of investor capital to do the same thing, you're not on an even playing field. It's just going to be difficult, right? It's like that's all.
And that's why you really got to be prepared. We are getting the hook. Thank you for the opportunity, for keeping us here, inviting us, and
Thank
and
you
hope
to
we were
Benzinga.
helpful.
Thank you.